All right, everyone, this is my face. My name is Adrienne Adams. I am a first year, and if you see me looking to the side, I'm admitting folks because I like to operate on this inclusion-exclusion policy. I'm a first year PhD student in American Studies and Ethnicity at USC, but I'm living in Las Vegas right now. Uh, Panelists, could you mute your mic, please? And so Today we're gathered to celebrate four legends, truly legends. And we have Ajamu X in the house. We got Alan Bell. We got Gregory Victorianne, Gregory Darnell Victorianne, and Ric Irick. And so we got L.A., London, D.C., formerly Boston, formerly Chicago, formerly New York, all of that, past, present, future. So I'm gonna start. I unfortunately am the one responsible for getting y'all together in terms of stickler and rules, etc. So before we get to the fab panelists, I'm going to share my screen, and we're gonna get this on and poppin'. And I am sharing it with you all. So these are the four publications at play, as I mentioned. And we're not going to be able to cover everything with these, but we're going to be able to really start to tease at all of the fun, play, humor, seriousness, glossiness, faxing that's here. And in order to do that, we have to thank the folks that made it possible in terms of financial contributions that are on the screen. We also have I want to thank the Department of American Studies and Ethnicity in particular for really jumpstarting this event, making it possible, my home department. And also One Archives will be hosting a recording of this within the next month. So for prosperity, we're all here. And so in terms of panel guidelines, now we got the heavy text. We like it heavy set and we like it heavy text, as they say. So we will be emailing the recording, as I said. Don't worry if you miss that one word that Ajamu said, probably for the best, but you can catch it anyway. Closed captioning is available for the folks that I've mentioned in the emails too. It's here, and now technical questions will be going to Jeanette Ramirez. Thank you, Jeanette. So make sure to ping them, not everyone else. And then post questions in the chat function. I love my folks. I love Black queerness, and I also know that my folks love to chat. And so chat function is a way to mediate. We don't have all day, all night for some. And then finally, and I'll mention this in the Q&A, no questions about COVID. We're not doing everything in the kitchen sink here. We are speaking about a specific context. And yes, of course, there's overlaps, confluences, the HIV and AIDS epidemic, for example, and COVID. But Black folks don't need to have an opinion on everything. And we can just speak about what we're speaking about at this moment. So now that I got all of that fun stuff, I feel like I channeled my inner Dom. That was really like me, like pulling it out. And so in terms of the agenda, this is what's going to get on and pop in. First off, we're going to start with interpersonal origin. So how do the panelists know one another? And by starting with this, we're foregrounding that these publications are deeply personal. And so to understand the people first as an entry point into all of this. And then the publications, why they did it, how they did it, who they did it with, on and off the page. And then we have a visual story time where the panelists will speak about one cover, technology that they made with it, how it circulated, etc. And then finally we'll do a Q&A. And I know that many folks here may have had these publications. So if you want to drop a line in that reflection portion and just like, oh, I had this when blah, blah, blah. Like, that's what we're all about here. And so without further ado, we're going to get started. Ajamu, how do you even know these people? How do you know Alan? How do you know the girls? Let's hear about it.
Morals.
And first of all, I'm glad that you're trying to channel your Dom Interesting concept. But anyway, so I went to the States in about 1993, 94 to try and do some research actually around magazines. I'm activists. My first trip to the States was in 1992 to spend time with Essex Hemphill. So then I think in 1993 that was my second trip on 94. So then I saw Rick. I met Rick while Rick was delivering mailboxes in Lambda Rising, and I was also trying to cruise Rick as well at the same time because Rick is fine. I have to say that Papa is fine. So that's how I met Rick, and then Alan. I went to Los Angeles, and then that's where I met Alan, and I have two kind of memories. One is I'm going into his bedroom. I see this massive bank of VHS porn. Yeah, and I've never seen anything like it since. Just this bank of porn, and also Alan also ran a sex club called Blackjacks. Yeah, and so Blackjacks was run out of a hotel room, and I was on the door for the event that I went to. And so years later, Black Jackson was the template for the Black Perverts Network, and then also at the same time I met Stanley Bennett Clay of SBC magazine. I'm Lloyd Vega from Vega Press, and I'm GD. I think that we probably met in London first, and that might have been at the Voxx. But I think kind of that's where we met. And then the last time I saw you was in South Africa at the AIDS conference, and the last time I saw Rick was in Amsterdam, and Rick has been promising me some lunch for like 10, 15 years, but no shade, no tea, Rick. I'm just saying. That's it.
And then what about the Alan Bell?
Sorry. Go on, Alan.
I was going to say that one of the things about getting old and maybe being called a legend is that you get to forget things and not remember them, and you have an excuse and nobody jumps on you. I remember how I met Gregory very, very well because we've continued to work, and we kind of ran in the same Los Angeles circles, which I'll say in a second. But everything that Ajamu said about coming out here and Blackjack and all of that, I had totally forgotten all of that until he brought it up. And then when he brought it up, it's kind of like it opened up that memory, and it's kind of like, yeah, I kind of remember that now, you know. So thank you for that that memory, and also for outing me about my porn collection. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Back in BLK, in a sense, was born out of HIV and AIDS in a way. We'll talk about that later, but Gregory and I both have worked in HIV and AIDS for many years, and that's how we met. We met through those connections. Rick, I didn't know at the time, but I remember when I first saw Mailbox and I saw his name, I was absolutely fascinated, and still fascinated by Ric Irick. I just think that is just so cool, the way those first and last names fit together. But yes, you know, once I found out that about his publication, then we became part of the fraternity of publishers, and that's how we met.
So, and Ms. GD? Or GD, what's your tea? What are you given in terms of this question?
Yeah, definitely. Meeting Ajamu was definitely in England at the club called the Voxx. And at that time, Essex was on tour. And I just happened to run into Essex while I was over there doing some freelance writing for some of the UK music scene, Omar, Galliano, Incognito, Lucien's De-Influence, Vanessa Simone, just doing freelance writing for various magazines. So, run into Essex and then run into Ajamu there who I met. Echoing the words with Alan, definitely we were in the same circles, specifically with the Minority Age Project under the leadership of Bishop Carl Bean. I was volunteering with them at the time, and so that's where we met. And living in Los Angeles, we ran into some of the same people. Met Brother Rick when I was volunteering with the Black Gay Lesbian Leadership Forum, doing their PR work, and able to have that platform to go out there and not only promote the conference every year, but go to these certain cities where our conference was being held, and being able to just see what was on the front line. And the Mailbox was like, this is phenomenal. And it was very similar to what inspired me to do Bootyvox. And that's how we all of us cross-check with each other.
And then Rick, in terms of you, I mean, you're from, or in the DC area. How are you messing around with the LA boys and the Londoners?
Well, the advantage of living in Washington, D.C., I always say, is that everyone comes here. At some point, you're going to come to Washington, D.C. for a convention or a family reunion. Something will bring many men, Black gay men to Washington, D.C., not to mention our eventful Pride celebrations that we will have every May. Well, I should say I've met 3 of them here in Washington, 2 of them, I should say. One, Alan, I met in LA. And Alan I met, he doesn't remember this, and I don't blame him. I was just a fan of BLK. Alan was, at that time, in my mind at least, a legend, already a legend. So that he doesn't remember a meeting with a fledgling, nothing. That's not a problem. Trust me, it's not. I was just glad to have any kind of conversation with someone whose reputation, in my mind, had preceded him. Now, Greg also came to Washington, D.C. I knew of his publication more than I knew of him. I thought, this brother is really pushing it to the edge, and I like that. So he gave me some idea of where the margins were. And I wanted to go almost, maybe right up to the margin. And he set the example for that. And I always will remember you for that, Greg. Ajamu and I are both Scorpios born on the very same day. And as he will remember, we met in Lambda Rising as I was stocking that gay bookstore with copies of the Mailbox. Well, Ajamu was also this amazing photographer. And of course, he was generous with his images that we ran in our magazine. And of course, you can't look at an Ajamu image and not talk about it. So it definitely served as a marketing vehicle for the magazine whenever I had him and other photographers, Hope and Stewart, others that, so numerous I can't even name. But they all contributed to our success, and I'm very, very grateful to this day.
This is a beautiful confluence of people, and I think also of centering the playfulness or the cruising, and not necessarily in sort of this, and apologies for the sound, but this sense of camaraderie that forms in perhaps unexpected places. And so in terms of the next question, I really want to get into why Bootyvox, why Mailbox, like what, you sort of touched briefly on these inspirations, but if you could speak further to the origins, as murky as origins are. And this time I'd love to start with Rick, just to switch things up.
Well, in the day before the internet, there were publications. I saw them, I was aware of them. I never imagined I was going to be in this business. In my real life, my professional life, I was selling ads. I was with a Fortune 500 company and doing a very good career with that. But I was also involved with the gay community, and there seemed to be a need. A vehicle was needed in order for various organizations, predominantly the AIDS organizations, to get their message and to target their messages directly to the Black gay community, specifically of Washington at the time. There didn't seem to be such a thing. Well, in partnership with my business partner, the late, great Raymond Carter, we were able to put together basically a mailing list of all of the men that were interested in the events that Raymond was throwing at various clubs around the city, including the Edge, well, before that, La Zambra's, other now defunct clubs. So he had an extensive mailing list. It was not at all difficult to convince these organizations that they needed to include a flyer at a certain price in a monthly mailing that went out to these men that wanted to know what's the next event, what's the next thing coming up here at the clubs. And so with our very first issue, we were profitable. We charged the companies, the organizations, to include their flyer in with our mailing. And at first, the very first issue, we didn't even have content. It wasn't until the second and subsequent issues that content became important. And I should admit, content came very easily. I just made a plea for men to share with us your information, your experiences, your opinions, and your emotions. And it came flooding in to the point that way beyond my wildest dreams, we had more content than we could ever dream. So we had the financing from the advertisers, we had the content from the readers. Mailbox was just simply a coordination of those two, and we never lost a dime nor missed an issue in all of its existence.
I think what I'm hearing from that is a sense of consistency and what that does in terms of building these networks and connections. And for you, GD, in terms of Bootyvox, so let me get this straight. At one point, you're doing, this isn't your full-time gig. I mean, you have a day job and Bootyvox, like Rick was talking about, having this and then that.
Yes.
So what's going on here? Like, tease it out for us.
Sure. At the present time, I was a law clerk for a law firm, but I was also volunteering with the Minority AIDS Project and the Black Gay Lesbian Leadership Forum and the AIDS Prevention Team. So I was doing that community work, assisting my sisters and brothers in fighting this AIDS pandemic. Bootyvox came about through my co-publisher, Joseph Benson. Originally, we had started a club Buckaroo, and we had a newsletter called Playground Adventures. We changed it to Playground and Rhythm right in December, where we just did focusing on music, but we had one erotic piece that just took off. And we took a break from it. And then we came back a few months later and reinvented the name Buti, B-U-T-I, which is we use Benson, which is the first initial of his last name. So B for Buti, B-U-T-I. And for myself, Victorianne, the word Voxx, which is Latin for voice, and leaving London and hanging out with the Ajamu and all the other sisters and brothers, I said, wait a minute, Voxx, and I just threw the extra X on there to equal B-U-T-I-V-O-X-X. Bootyvox started kicking in, and we would be distributed doing Pride celebrations, Black Pride celebration. Let me make sure that brother to brother retreats, the National Black Gay Leadership Forum, most importantly, at the beach here in Los Angeles. Yes, Brothers United down in Tennessee would ask us, hey, can you do a publication for it? Sure, we'd be there. So wherever I was able to publish something for the nieces and nephews and providing a platform for the brothers and sisters who saw themselves, because I didn't see any other publications representing me or many other individuals, especially among the language. Our language at that time was very specific. And I think that would go back to Dr. May's Cochrane, George Bellinger paper on the language of Black gay voices. So, and also I always like to toot my own horn. You know, I do my own thing. If I don't like, you know, yeah, I just didn't see what was out there, and I said, do it yourself. You want it done, do it yourself. And there was so many sisters and brothers who jumped on the bandwagon with Bootyvox, and it's like, wow, yeah.
And I think what's so fascinating, Judy, as you're talking, is that sense of connection that you can form at conferences, at these places. It's physical. It's in the mail. Like there's, you know, these different ways of being with others, which is really clutch, as they would say.
Definitely, it was, yes.
And then your LA brethren, Alan Bell, was doing some stuff with BLK, starting a publishing company, being a graphic design pioneer, as we all know today. Alan, how, who, what, where, when, why, how, and which?
Okay, try to condense a lot of this very quickly. I lived in New York. I started a publication there, a weekly called Gaysweek. We talked about how that each of our publications reflect who we are. And at the time that I started Gaysweek, which was for the entire New York community, not the African American community, I kind of saw myself as a gay man. Didn't really think of myself particularly as a Black gay man. My consciousness wasn't there at the time. And came out to, I was there 10 years, did Gaysweek for 3. By the end of my term in New York, I was starting to develop a bit of a gay political consciousness. Came back to LA, but wasn't in publications, worked in typesetting and printing, got involved with the Leadership Forum. And about this time, folks are saying, well, you know, we need a publication. You did Gaysweek in New York City. I'm saying, no, been there, done that. But at the same time, AIDS is on the front burner in the community. I get involved with the Minority AIDS Project, and I decide that Minority AIDS Project is doing a great job of what they can do, but that a sex club can do a little bit more because we can actually talk about and put in practice what the posters say do. So I started a sex club called Blackjack. And according to the Advocate, they say that I'm the first person to do that sort of thing in hotel rooms. And it was Blackjack. It was called Blackjack because it was for Black folks. And to promote it, we did flyers, developed a newsletter. My publishing and printing chops are starting to come to the front, and the flyers turned into newsletters, the newsletters turned into 4-page newsletters, and they turned into 8-page newsletters, and then we finally did a 16-page newsletter for a sex club. I mean, does a sex club need a 16-page newsletter? But by that time, it had news and ads and stuff in it, and I thought, okay, this can have a wider circulation than the sex club. And talked to some people, and Jewel Williams and Phil Wilson, about whether or not a publication is possible. We all knew that it was necessary, and came up with a business plan, which we can talk about later, and essentially stopped the newsletter and started BLK. And in some ways, BLK is the Blackjack newsletter. So that's the core the core origin story.
I'm not one with geometry, but that sounds a bit like full circle. And so, and also, I love that you're throwing around Jewel Thace Williams, like, oh yeah, no, my friend Jewel, as if it's like, just like casual going to Food for Less and be like, oh, that's my good Judy. And so, in terms of Ajamu, there's 149 people on this call.
Wow.
They want to know a little something about London Town. I mean, I don't personally, but they do. So I'm just trying to give fan service at this point.
It depends on what parts of London Town folks need to know about. So you might have to inbox me personally. But anyway, so I'm Wibbs. I'm so basically I'm first of all I'm going to acknowledge the actual three more founders of Wibbs, right? Yeah, I'm Michael Cadet, Trevor Hines, and Ian Bailey. And so really, four of us created Wickers and others outside. Sorry. I'm in Brixton. And so basically Wickers is a Wickers is a derivative of the word Wicca, and which means witch. Yeah, and the word bulla is a term that's used for gay men in Trinidad and Barbados. And the tagline was an almost serious Black lesbian and gay publication. And so basically, and the magazine kind of was include stories, news, club news, bits of gossip, and so really it was around kind of not taking things too seriously, or I'm basically actually playing around with lots of kind of ideas. And so basically I felt that lots of your Black gay politics around the time and the newsletters that was out was really serious, and they were kind of playful, not sexy. I'm Wibbs. I came out of that. And so really kind of part of it, I was trying to really acknowledge that, I'm those of us who were then born and raised in the UK, actually a lot of our heritage comes from the Caribbean. So best, that's what we kind of drew upon, that Caribbeanness. Yeah. And there was 5 issues. I did 3 covers, and I'm 2 of the covers is by an amazing photographer called Sharon Wallace. And so really Wibbs was very much kind of a few of us just creating something that was kind of different and new. And so Wibbs was the first kind of commercially produced Black LGBT magazine. And so as well as the content, it was also about aesthetics, production values. And so really kind of we came out of Face, Blitz, and then these other lifestyle kind of magazines, and so we kind of pulled upon all of that as well. So that's kind of some of the background. And then also Wibbs and was launched at Gay Pride also, and that took place in Brixton that year as well. So that's kind of a rough background to how Wibbs came about.
I feel like what's incredible about what each of you have said, not that anyone on this cares, but I'll just sort of do some through lines just for some shits and gigs. And so the sense of the deeply personal nature, the fact that you're drawing on a particular Caribbean sensibility, connections, Alan drawing on on typewriting and design and sort of this type of background and so on. And so I think there's a way in which to understand an individual not entirely through their publications, but as deeply integral. And that was my academic way of saying not quite, but not quite. So if you followed that math equation, you've done better than me. And so in terms of the next section, we're going to talk about, put it on the screen, put these covers up. Each have selected a cover to talk about, two that they may have wrestled with for some, and to really talk about the making of this thing, of this object. And so without further ado, Ajamu, let's get into some W&B. You're on mute, my love.
Sure. Yes, so this was actually the last Wibbs that I actually was involved in. And so I shot the cover. And the key point to this issue was we had Made in Britain, yeah? And then basically for those of you who are then not aware of and what the British flag looks like, and we turned the flag onto its side. So basically, and what we kind of like have here is playing around and with this some idea of Britishness via kind of blackness. And the model on the front cover was Pedro King, who was also a drag queen during the 80s, called Foxy Brown. Yeah. And so so basically we had some cash to print from welfare checks. That's how the first 3-4 o'clock came into being. And then some of your club folks kind of gave us some cash as well, but really it came from our own pockets. And yes, so printed, designed quite well. It's because I'm for us, it also had to look good as well, and so really kind of it's about A5 pocket size, and so really it just had to look good, feel nice paper, all of that. I think me came into this issue, and then I kind of stepped back. It's because things change for all kinds of reasons. So really kind of this one is still my favorite cover that I shot as well.
Thank you for that. And in terms of what you're talking about in this inversion and playing with orientation is also deeply exciting given this particular moment, 1994 in London. And I would love to hear more during the Q&A about this particular moment that you're in. And so then with Alan, talk to us about these two covers. What was sort of going on in your head as you were like, I have to pick out of my repertoire, Alan Bell's repertoire? What a harder task to just choose one or two.
Well, first I want to pick up on what Ajamu said about how graphics is important to publication. It was important to me as well, and so the covers were very important. But on to these two, picking between these two, BLK was conceived as the Time magazine of the Black, lesbian, and gay community. So we tried to cover it all, and we had sections. And part of what BLK tried to cover was the serious political topics of the time, but also the issues which were entertainment, but with some class. So we covered Joe Simmons, who was arguably at the time one of the most famous Black porno stars, but we didn't do it, like in a titillating way. We did it more the way that I think that Playboy would have done it, and treated him seriously. We treated him with the same seriousness that we would have treated, I don't know, interviewing Joe Biden. We talked about his life. And so in trying to decide between the two covers, it's like, okay, do I talk about the serious part of BLK, or do I talk about the entertainment part of BLK? I decided that I was going to talk about the serious part of BLK, and we were going to talk about this particular cover because we talked about AIDS from the very beginning, but this was the first cover story that we did. And I think it was particularly significant because we talked about what is now canon. I mean, everybody knows that HIV and AIDS isn't just a disease, that it's part of the health community, it's part of racism, it's part of housing, it's part of all of it. But at the time, people that might have, at the time, that was a view in some quarters because nothing essentially new under the sun, but it certainly wasn't a view that was on the front burner. And we took this holistic view of HIV and AIDS in the Black LGBT community, and I think that we said some things that unfortunately turned out to be true about how HIV turned out to be more prevalent in the Black community. It wasn't at the time, and hopefully, some of this information got to the right places. Hopefully, there was some consciousness that was raised. But yeah, this is. I'm proud of this issue.
And sorry for the teaser for Bootyvox, but thank you in terms of talking about that it wasn't an inevitable thing in terms of HIV and AIDS, in terms of it particularly afflicting the Black networks and Black communities, that there were specific things that were being done in which this disparity was exacerbated here and not perhaps elsewhere. And so, and I think it's fascinating that with BLK and with Wickers and Bullers, just that straight on portrait style, like a type of visual language around this, and what is being communicated. But you didn't ask for a museum attendant, so let's get to Gregory. Let's get to the Queen herself.
Damn, dog. Okay, where we similar to Alan, there were so many issues that I wanted to put on, but the one to your left, when they voted for 187, this occurred in 1994 when Proposition 187 was passed. And during that time, the Black Gay Lesbian Leadership Forum was going to be hosting our annual conference in Los Angeles. And this initiative really changed the dynamics of how many Californians saw the immigrants here, and where immigrants' rights were being violated. And the brother who did this, Mark Durham, he and I just talked about it, and he said, "Hey, G, I got a cover for you." And if you look very closely at this issue, the issue was actually faxed to me. There was no internet at that time. Mark was over at the USC campus, hanging out with the homeboys at the frat house, and I'm on the west side at the AIDS prevention team, getting this issue done. And the only way that we can get it was the fax machine. And it was it's one of my best issues because we really never talked about politics, but because Durham was right on point, because hey, this is still where we are today if we look at what he is saying. And if it wasn't for brothers of the APT, like my brother David Blac, who was really helpful with this here, and all the other teams, it would have been challenged. But I love this issue because of the illustrations of the people there. You represent our Blackness. You represent what is going on today at this present time. So that was one of my issues. Shifting over night sweats and the image of Ajamu. One thing I always did with Bootyvox, we told a story. You open it up and you was able to see things. We discussed music, slander with candor, pieces and pieces. We do a little bit about, as we push the envelope. And like Rick said, I was able to push the envelope just a little more because I published it myself. If we expected money from somebody, hell, I wouldn't have done it. But luckily we had people who donated some funds to us, the coins, and say, hey, take this here, take this here. And this issue here, Ajamu's illustration really represented the lace, the black penis, but also the fact that the brother was really kind enough to allow me, to allow Bootyvox to be published without any compensation, because we made no money. And so the one thing that we did with all our writers, we sent them some issues. We may send them a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. I was writing with the Capitol Records, so they sent me all these sweatshirts of Grace Jones. So I was able to do that. But going back to this here, Night Sweats is a poem about a little bit about HIV, about cruising. It was written by a good brother in DC. And the illustrations is by another brother, Belasco. And many times I was criticized for having so much sex in an issue, but I said, if you look closely, you will see the condoms on these illustrations. So even though I was an activist of HIV and stuff, I was still promoting sex positive with images of condoms and everything to prevention piece. So I try to balance out my professional career in addition to my pleasure. And publishing Bootyvox with other sisters and brothers, it was our pleasure because the language we were using was not in mainstream publications. We weren't allowed, or maybe they wouldn't allow us to be published. So we started publishing ourselves. If you want to get it done, we did it ourselves. And that's something that I believed in. And because of the platform I had, I was able to allow other sisters and brothers whose works weren't in the in mainstream publications in Bootyvox. And it wasn't just about me, but it was just really showcasing my sisters and brothers who weren't able to get publicized. But yeah, this issue, it was strong. So we had illustrations on the left side, something strong on the right side, and we just nailed it. That's it.
And it's correct, GD, that you still have the envelopes that Ajamu mailed the prints in, right?
Yeah. As I was going through the archives, we had the envelopes, palm cards, little Post-it notes that people sent to us. Everything, whatever came through Bootyvox, it was done. You know, it was fax or someone sent me something through a napkin or something. And again, the internet wasn't available until later on. So we were only communicating by phone, by mail, and that's how we got our stuff out. People say, well, I don't, you know, some people weren't getting the internet at the early time. So it's like, well, send it to me, fax it to me. And if there was a discrepancy, I'll go back to the writer because it was definitely the writer's work and I didn't want to touch anything and say, there's something wrong here. Let's see what it is before I go to press. So I wanted to respect them because sometimes this was their first article or first piece ever being published. And once it's in print, it's done. So yes, indeed. So I have to respect the artistic of when they submit something, even if it was their first submission ever. It's like, let's work together on making this here so you can shine. And it was the writers, the photographers, the cartoonists, illustrators. Those are the ones who dictated the publication. I just like, this is what I like. And it was them. So Ajamu Images was like right on time. I wanted to pay homage to the great work he was doing. And this was a way for me to do it. And we just moved on. But, you know, yeah, it was some good stuff. But look at the illustrations. You saw the messages of prevention. And that's what we're about, sex positive. And we saw ourselves in these images, brothers with afros or cornrows, or you know, all those images. Is that who we are? Because the other mainstream publications wasn't doing it. They didn't cut it for me. So sisters and brothers wanted to see themselves, and that's what we're about.
Who needs Duke University Press when you got GD as your publisher? I mean, this is the sexual cultures that we need in a series, stat NYU Press. And closing out with this portion, contestant number 9, Ric Irick, could you talk about, for your interview portion, what these 2 images, what you were grappling with, and then ultimately why you sort of selected the one?
Well, first and foremost, Mailbox was for men. And so its very name screamed out, this is for males. And there was no internet at the point, and so we distributed it through subscriptions to men that received it in their mailboxes. And well, there is an illustration of a small mailbox in our upper portion. Well, to the left, one of my favorite issues, maybe my very favorite issue, was the one that we called Rapture, that dealt with male rape. Now, we never had any paid writers. We simply, in the issues, implored people to send us your stuff. It often came, as Greg mentioned, it came in by fax. Then it eventually started coming in by email, which I appreciated because it didn't have to be then re-entered as type. And well, I would organize it in basically shoe boxes according to the topic. One of the shoe boxes that, to my surprise, was nearly overflowing all the time were for men that wanted to recount a first sexual experience, or maybe sometimes a sexual fantasy, but it all revolved around rape, their rape. They're raping someone else. This violence in a sexual experience, I was amazed. Well, it didn't take long to have enough, more than enough, to assemble an issue just around that one topic. Well, we talked about rape in prison that had occurred to some men who gave us their actual blow-by-blow, forgive the words, but they told us what happened to them when they were in prison and took us right through the experience, as distasteful as it was. There were others that were assaulted as children by adults who knew what they were doing and took advantage of them, or saw some indication that these might be gay children and decided to lead them along the path. And then one story, and this stands out in my mind on that issue, about a brother that was lured into a rape scene, a gang rape scene, when he follows someone home or invites someone home who, through a series of events, basically invites his boys to come in as well. And well, in a locked down situation, he has no escape and has to deal with many, many assaulters. That really broke my heart. Well, as I mentioned, in our 60 pages of that particular issue, we ran out of space before we ran out of stories, remembering that we had to leave room for our advertisers that were paying the freight. We never lost a dime, never. Let me point out on this particular rape issue that the image there done by Hopton Stewart, who I haven't seen in years, but we communicate on Facebook. I thought that it perfectly showed the shame that was associated with this act. The hoodie coming over his face so that he was not able to or didn't have to show his face. It just perfectly conveyed what the issue had in store for you. On the other side, this was our second favorite issue. Well, my favorite, because mailbox readers often wrote of their search for love, for companionship. And they were often frustrated that they would seek this among other Black men, but not find it. After so much searching, they found that there were men that were not ready, men that were not out, men that were not self-accepting, men that were just not able partners. So after so long in the search, they began to turn to themselves and ask, is it time for a white guy? Do I give a white guy a chance? And more we had more submissions on this than we could possibly print, where they were querying themselves and others. Do I do this? They didn't want to do it necessarily. We weren't interested in those men's stories that were only interested in interracial relationships. Rather, we were looking for those who had searched high and low for that Black on Black experience, and then out of a sense of frustration, turned away from that and looked in other fields so as not to perish without love. Our writers were readers that submitted, and under their own names, sometimes under pseudonyms. They let us know that they were looking for love. It was sheathed sometimes in sex, but they were seeking love, and well, oftentimes didn't find it.
Thank you so much. And I think now we can stop sharing the screen, is the sense of, also David Flott, I believe, who was mentioned earlier, if I wasn't mistaken. Shout out to David Flott. But what I appreciate, Rick, in what you're saying about shame, or these, and the emphasis on emotion or feeling in this is then like the variety that we get throughout all of these colors in terms of shame, ecstasy, sultriness, a type of seriousness or playfulness, and to have all of those circulating at the same time, not as sort of an either or, but a both and type of improv game. And so now this is a part, I know that folks will inevitably at the hour mark, our sort of bodily clocks are like, okay, I need to go. But we do have, for folks who can stay along, Q&A section, going to get it pop-in reflections, put in the chat. If you are, if you've read one of these, if you knew about them, how you know these people, like, let's get this chat as a type of archive for ourselves. And so that said, I know it's always a sort of whiplash when it's like, okay, now ask your questions, but for real, do folks have questions for the panelists? And if not, I do not mind sitting in silence, so we can do that for 32 minutes. I'm good.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
What's up, Keith Crawford? Thanks for coming in.
Yes. So let me just give a little backdrop before I actually ask the question. So I live in Washington, D.C. With Ric Irick. And Rick, thank you for sharing. And I remember those Mailbox days quite fondly. And all of the others, Alan Bell, Victorianne, everyone. I love all your publications, but this is the dilemma. So living in DC, I consider us culturally rich in terms of African Americans, same gender loving, just a whole community. And so we have some excellent playwrights here in DC. We have Alan Sharp, and we have several others, Steve Langley. And when you go to these plays, I mean, some of them are showcased at the Kennedy Center and other high profile settings. And so you see people in our generation there. You do not see the younger generation. You don't see, even though they have young actors dealing with young issues, you don't see those people. We have our Black pride.
Hey, sorry, 1 second. David Flott, do you mind muting?
I'm sorry.
Thanks, no worries.
I'm sorry. Hold on 1 minute.
And then, sorry, what was your, could you sort of clarify your question or?
Okay, yeah. So the other point I was going to make, when we have our sessions where we have Black gay authors writing, we don't see young people coming out. So the question that I'm asking the panelists, and maybe even some of the other people who are participating, where is the next generation? Are they even interested in these publications? Because from our generation, we saw the Mailbox and we saw BLK. This was just manna from heaven. I mean, we are actually expressing ourselves, under our own terms. This generation behind us just doesn't seem interested in that. They don't come up to the events. I'm wondering, do they read? Do they write? What has happened to the succeeding generation of Black gay men?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, and I think it's important, given that this is an intergenerational dialogue. Ajamu, I know that with your photographic work, and apologies, but for folks who aren't speaking at the moment, if they can mute the mic. Ajamu, with your work and these intergenerational connections, which are so central to who you are, could you sort of talk a bit about or have like a response?
Yeah, I'm in the 2000s. You had a journal called Men of Color, right? Yeah, and so basically, I think about 12 issues were created, and also actually over the last 2-3 years, actually, you have seen a group of younger Black queers print their own journals, and so basically, there's Campbell Addy, who's printed 2 issues so far. I'm Casey Myers, who did a magazine called Dick Print. And then there is a wonderful young brother called Emmanuel Balogun, who's also published as well. Actually, your younger folks are printing their own magazines. And then actually a lot of them also come out of fashion. And so we and that's the space that they come from. And so basically the young queers are printing.
Thank you, Ajamu, and I want to be mindful that there are a few other questions, and we can definitely continue this on or emailing panelists, however we connect. But Delana Hunter, did you want to say your question aloud, or do you just want to do the chat?
I mean, I can read it. I can read it aloud. Folks wanted to talk about it. Of course, I can't. You know what? I can't even see it anymore. But the question was about ephemerality, and I know that's like maybe more an academic term, but just thinking about the ways that your works were created in the 90s, and maybe even earlier, that people don't readily have access to today with so many things being online. So then I know I have access to some of these things as an archivist, but then how would younger generations have access to some of these materials that you have to be able to hold in your hands? So I wonder, how you guys were dealing with that, with the younger generations who are looking for you and may not be able to find you if you're not on, Instagram or Twitter or however, and they may be too young to be in spaces like these. I mean, many of us are, we're in academia, we're in our careers, we have access to these sorts of webinars. But people who are in their teens and young adults these days, they may not necessarily have that access. So I just wondered how you guys were dealing with this, with the ephemerality of your works as we're in the 21st century.
Well, if I can add my 2 cents about that, yes, that was then, and it presented on paper, at least in the case of Mailbox, always on paper, and went to those to whom it concerned. And well, after that issue, it disappeared. Or maybe some people, as I run into people, they tell me they have full collections of everything that we printed from 1993 until 1999. However, in Mailbox's case, and I believe will be the case of the other publishers, the Schomburg Library in New York has our full collection, our full catalog of every issue we ever printed. I was approached. I didn't go to them. I was approached and asked. I was honored to collect or to add, to put those together and to send it to them. And well, as for the longevity of this or the ability for future generations to see it, that would be the primary source of that, given that paper is not for always. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think that there's also the issue of things that are online now being very ephemeral. If a link is broken or a server crashes, then it's not available. But also not everyone is not everyone is library literate. So I sometimes wonder about those folks. I would think to go to the library, that'd be the first place I would think of, but I know not everyone is like that. So I'm always thinking about how do you reach those people who may not, that's just may not be the way that they look for information. And I really want them to know that they have grandparents out there and great grandparents in queerness who are there to guide them and teach them. So that's just where my mind is. But thank you very much for your response.
Can I weigh in on that? Part of what BLK was about was preserving history from the get-go. I was interested in getting information out to the community, but I was also interested in preserving information for the future. And so not only so we made sure that we printed enough extra issues for them to go everywhere that I can possibly think of, to gay archives, to Black museums, to Black libraries, to all the HBCUs and all of that. In my fantasy, there would be a BLK website and a Blackfire website and a Black Lace website. But even if those websites existed, I don't know how much interest there would be for the general community, for younger folks to go back and check out a 1988 publication unless they had some particular interest. So I have been less concerned about getting it online, but more concerned about getting it in all the possible places so that if somebody is interested, that it'll be there. And one of the most important kind of things that I was kind of proud of is that the National African American Museum in DC requested a full run of BLK and as part of their permanent collection.
And also with, speaking of archives, I mean, we cannot have this conversation and not mention the Stephen Fullwood in the room. Stephen at the Schoenberg Center, also archivists like Stephen have been doing the thing before it was cool, before there was grants behind it. And so when we talk about Stephen Fullwood, we're talking about the Stephen Fullwood. We're talking about Delana Hunter of the Hunter dynasty. And so I think one thing that's beautiful about this event, and thank you for your question, Delana, is just the folks here, the presence of the amount of, Black queer folks doing the thing, Black folks doing the thing. And I wanted to also thank you, Christopher, for your kind thoughts. You say it's so wonderful to see this session and these brothers are all lifted up. They have all been griots for our culture. Thank you for that. And also we have time for more questions, so we can take those. I have clearly questions, but want to hear from y'all too. For the person who raised their hand, what's up? Let's do it. You're on 98.2.
Hello. My name is Adabumike. I know it looks a little hard to pronounce. First of all, I want to start by thanking all of you guys. I think it means a lot because I feel like a lot of times we're taught that we lost a lot of this history with the HIV, epidemic. And I'm just so happy that there is history that is alive. I think definitely as young queer Black people, we're very much, everybody wants to have a history. And I feel like that's just the general story of African Americans and America in general, which is like, where do we come from? Where do we sit within, So I just want to I want to first start with that. And secondly, I want to go on and ask, I feel like definitely nowadays, I don't know how prevalent it may have been previously, but I feel like the demonization of especially Black men with the the how do I explain it? It's a narrative that queer Black men in general is the downfall of the African American people as a whole. And I wanted to know if this was something you were also dealing with. Growing up in homes where I've been with religious people, and it's just like, well, this is what's going wrong with Black men, and this, that, and the third. Have you guys also had to deal with that in your time? And having these magazines, being attached to these things, how did you guys deal with
that? Let me just weigh in on it. I never felt dehumanized or anything of that nature. First and foremost, my family supported my sexual identity. That was extremely important when I came out to them right after high school. And then going through that process, I was learning more about myself, learning more about Black identity. One thing about Bootyvox was we wanted to affirm our sisters and brothers on who they were, sexually, mentally, physically, and overall. It wasn't about dehumanizing anything, but the way society was, that's with them. But for our publication, I wanted to make sure when that sister or that brother turned that last page over, they felt good about themselves. They saw themselves on who they are. And I never got that much any negativity on it. Some people didn't like what I published, but that wasn't my problem. If they didn't like it, I just say, well, publish it yourself. But more importantly, after each issue, no matter how many pages it was, or the format from 5x7, 11x17, 8.5x11, our issue was going to affirm the reader. We may piss you off, which we like to do, but at the end of the day, you saw yourself in what we were displaying with the images, the cartoons, but most importantly, the words. The writers themselves there were so many excellent writers. There was one article, Twin, by my brother, Sanford Gaylord, that just, it's amazing how much I read that, and I saw myself. Or brothers like G. Winston James writing poems, I saw myself. And that's what was important, for them to see themselves in their writings and to feel loved and be encouraged.
Did any of the other panelists have thoughts? That was incredible, GD. And also thank you for the question. And thank you to the folks who are popping off in the chat, because we can't be together, so we can at least be in the chat. And I know Christopher Smith, you want to chime in. What's the tea? What's going on? We're here for you until 3:30, and then you have no one in your life. Just kidding. What's going on, Christopher?
Hold on. Oh, there we go. Oh, damn. I don't know what the hell just happened there. That's actually a photo by Ajamu, but apparently I messed up my video settings. So I'm going to take that off and just go on voice. So my question actually, well, it was for Ajamu, but also it extends to the rest of the panelists as well, because my encounter with all of these publications has been in these very interesting, again, in the mail kind of ways. And so the first time I heard about Wickers and Bullers was actually through reading one of the issues of The Juice by the Panani Posse, based in Toronto, Canada. And it was correspondence from someone from Wickers and Bullers talking about the work that they were doing. And so there was this interesting conversation that was happening, not just amongst Black gay men, but also Black gay men and lesbians, that were all doing this very radical, independent publishing. And so I'm curious how all of the panelists would think about the ways in which, despite the fact that the audience was primarily Black gay males, that there was this interesting kind of readership that was happening that's creating these connections across communities.
Well, this is Rick. If I understand your question correctly, you're asking about, well, within Black gay male, there can be very many subdivisions. And well, at least for Mailbox, if this is your question, we were only concerned with the Black gay male who was not necessarily out in his regular life. We certainly weren't looking at female to male transsexuals. That certainly wasn't our focus. We even specifically limited our reach to men that were not quote unquote sissies. Now you have to imagine this was an earlier time before the politically correct culture that we have evolved into was present. And we were non-apologetic. We would not apologize about who we wanted to submit to us, who we wanted to read us, even who we wanted to subscribe to us. And we did elicit some controversy with that choice, but we didn't feel like this group, this targeted, or this market was being targeted. And it was successful by any measure because, well, I always hold up that we were a successful business. We were not something that was there as an art vehicle. We were not talking about entertainment. We were not talking about dance. We were talking about what men were feeling, going through, experiencing in their quest for love, basically.
Oh, sorry.
So we took a little bit different tack on that, trying to be everything to everybody. So the business model for BLK actually included 4 publications. BLK was the news magazine for Black lesbians and gay men, serious publication. We talked about sex, but we talked about sex in a G-rated way. But there were 2 other publications that were much more sexual. One was Black Fire for men and Black Lace for women. And those publications talked a lot about sex. I mean, they were about sex, and the pictures were sexy as well, but they weren't porn. And in fact, Ajamu appeared in Blackfire number 5, and his imagery was exactly the sort of imagery that we had in mind for Blackfire, kind of sexy, but with an edge. And then there was a 4th publication, which was Kumba, which was poetry and for both Black lesbians and gay men, poetry and artwork. So there were those 4 publications trying to cover 4 different markets. And the part of the reason of separating out Black Lace and Blackfire is I don't know that the sexiness of Black Lace could fit into anything other than its own publication, in the same way that the sexiness of Blackfire needed its own publication so its wings could be spread. And so we split them up.
Yeah, thank you, Alan, Chris, GD. And now we got questions popping. We got 10 minutes left. We're going to close out in 8 minutes, play some music. The lights are going to come on from the club, and you can party with us for these few final minutes. I know that there was, we have 2 hands raised, but we also have in the chat, there was a question regarding from Day Rivers. What up, Day? Is what are you doing or getting up to now for those who want to share? Ajamu, I know you have some exciting news with your work. We haven't heard you in about 20 minutes, so we were about to like call your digital healthcare people to get you. So, you know, what's popping with you right now?
The reason why you've not heard from me is because it's 11:30 here and my bedtime was like 2 hours ago. So I'm yes, so I'm at the moment I've just launched a Kickstarter campaign to publish my first kind of artist book. And the book is an independent artist book. And so basically actually I've kind of gone back to how I used to kind of work. And so I'm predating Wibbs. I'm 85. I did a rhyme zine called BLAC called Blac. So basically that's what I am working on at the moment, and there's some new series of portraits around a group of younger Black queers. And so basically over the last kind of 10 years, I've been documenting the new kind of kids who are now kind of coming through. And so I'm as well as my sexual work, I've just been like I'm creating this archive over the last 30 plus years around a predominantly a Black British experience. And then the thing about Wibbs also was actually key for us that we were always in a transatlantic dialogue, even though we were London focused or UK focused. Key was that we was always having this dialogue with folks around the world as well. So that's what I'm kind of up to at the moment, and that's where my thinking is around kind of Wibbs and the archive. And then basically the thing about Wibbs is that actually while I'm aimed at, you know, Black gays and lesbians, I am also aware that lots of Black gays and lesbians would not come near it because of how we approached ideas around sex and pleasure and so on and so forth. And so then basically I think that we have to be aware that actually not all Black queer magazines are for all Black queer people. And then because actually it can't do all the work that we expect it to do. And there was actually, and the younger ones, right? Yeah, right. I'm, you know, they will find it if they want to find it. That's how it works. And so really, actually, they're there creating these amazing magazines, right? Yeah, that's their focus at this moment in time. They will come to what they need to come to when they come to it, and so that's how I am kind of see. That's how it kind of works, because I think that there is a danger that we expect that these amazing magazines from that period can do all the work for us, and it can't do that. And so that's my penny's worth. And that's slightly in a response to Christopher's question as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Ajamu, and also thank you to not only Ajamu but everyone that's holding out at 11:30. I know my bedtime's at 9 p.m., so you know, monkey see, monkey do not, you know. And so I know that I want to get to one question from a great homie, Elliot Jerome Brown Jr. You're on FDR Fireside Chats. This is FDR. What's going on?
Thank you. So I wanted to first thank you all for, you know, being here, giving us your time. And I wanted to, I guess, you know, quickly kind of share a memory that last year, like, at some point in 2019, I came across BLK in a shop that I was working in New Orleans, and the issues had happened to be purchased by someone, so they were leaving the shop, so I didn't have much time to spend with them. So I ended up doing a little bit more research into the magazine afterwards, and then called the number that was on the website, and I ended up calling Alan's direct phone number. And we spent some time in conversation with each other, and he very graciously sent me a huge box of BOK and Black Lace, Black Fire, Kumba, and a couple of other publications that he had a relationship with. And one thing that really struck me as I was reading Black Fire, and as I was reading both Black Fire and BOK, was that it included dissent. Like there were people who took issue with things that were published in the magazine because there was an interest in seeing how it was, how it was meshing with the audiences that it was meant for. So, on that note, all of you have maybe begun to speak to this, that, the magazines were for particular silos of gay Black life, and that they weren't meant to, be for everyone. But yeah, I guess I'm curious if there could be more conversation around speaking to like the dissent within the readership. Like, there is a loyal readership, and how people, challenge the magazines, and how maybe some of those challenges were then worked into the publication as you saw fit. And then I guess a part two of the question, which maybe will make this go over the next 5 minutes, is just thinking if you were to continue these publications into present day, how might you consider expanding the audience to reflect the variety of ways in which people inhabit gender? And that's it.
Let me say that that I absolutely enjoy Dissent, and would love to make a list of the publications or of the articles that we ran in BLK that I knew weren't necessarily canon. There was one particular article that was called Gay Black versus Black Gay. And you can imagine that was a lot. That was very, very controversial. So yes, so thanks for recognizing the dissent. There were people, Cleo Monago particularly took issue with us, and we tried to incorporate the sorts of things that he found needed to be talked about in the publication. I will say this, because so give some other people, but just very quickly to say that if BLK was being published today, I would actively try to find somebody who is Black and gay who supported Donald Trump, and I would try to find that person and get their view in the magazine. Not that we were going to be, like 100%, like evenly, like half Republic, I mean, obviously not that, but I think that it would be worth, like 2 pages in BLK to hear that craziness, or to hear that side, and treat it with respect. I said craziness here, but in the magazine, I would try to treat that perspective, whatever it was, with respect, and give it 2 pages.
I wouldn't change anything right now with Bootyvox. It would be just to be where we are. You like it? If not, it's your problem. That's the end of the day. I wasn't out there to please everybody. And they know where Bootyvox would be. The Brothers United in Nashville. Wherever I was, Bootyvox was, or we sent it to our writers. But I wouldn't change a thing. And something I'm thinking about is the best of Bootyvox. Stuff that wasn't published through the years. And you never know. But I have a 9-to-5 job for a while.
And on the 9 to 5, trying to stay alive, we can end here. I know that someone wanted to chat. I'm going to do sort of a closeout. If you still wanted to ask your question to the panelists, can stay by. But in closing, we have people from different, like 3 different continents. We got the African continent. We got the European context. We got the U.S., North America tea. And so thank you all. This is the first of many. And if it isn't, then, you can't hold me to it, but it definitely will be. So thank you all. And whoever wants to stick around can stick around for a cute few minutes, a little cute. So
Let me thank you, Adrienne. This was a wonderful walk down memory lane, a little painful because I had to reread a lot of issues that dealt with some subjects and things that we were going through at the time that we're not dealing with as much, thank goodness. But thank you for vitalizing this for moments.
Thank you, lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. When can we do it again?
Yeah. 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 Once I get my pension, we'll do it again. Just kidding. I know that Tomic, sorry for the mispronunciation, Tomic Dash, do you want to hop on? Folks can go, no press, we're good, but what's going on?
Sure, thank you. Hi, my name is Tomic Dash, and I actually am the editor-in-chief of a seasonal print magazine. I live in New York City, and it's called Fag Rag Fire Island. Fire Island has two gay communities, the Pines and the Grove. The Pines is predominantly gay men. Cherry Grove is predominantly women, lesbian women, and they're both predominantly white. And I really got my start out there really just from, going out there and go-go dancing. And I noticed a kind of gap in the marketplace, and I was very, I used to have a magazine before this, and I decided that I wanted to start a publication that could inject some Blackness into the island and kind of get rid of what this idea of what a typical Fire Island person looks like. And it's gone really well. So my question for the panelists is also one I want to thank you, because when I first started doing this, I was looking everywhere just to find other kind of like Black editor-in-chiefs of LGBT magazines. And it's like, somebody was saying, where do we find like the young people who are doing this? And a lot of times, you find them online. You find Instagram accounts or Twitter accounts or Tumblr accounts that have a big Black gay following, but not necessarily doing print stuff. And my magazine, it has a lot of fine art photography, and it kind of pushes the limits, I think, in a way that some of yours did in the past. And I wonder if any of you have any regrets about what your approach was when you were doing the magazine, or if there was something that looking back you wish you did differently, or just like changed your mind on as time has gone by.
No regrets whatsoever.
No regrets whatsoever. None. Each issue was affirming, and I just wish I was able to print more of that issue. But because we were a zine, we had limited numbers, 250, 500, 750, depending upon where the donors came from. And I had a good printer on the east side, one of my Latino brothers, who would say, hey man, let me print you a couple of thousand issues. No cost, because we just had community support. So I gave him what I needed, and he did what he could do, and he'll ship it back over to me with his posse. And I have no regrets for anything. The 45 issues, I just wish there was always more of each one.
Love that.
No regrets on anything that I did. If I had it to do over again, I think the only thing that I would do is not grow quite as quickly. I think that we might have been able to the business part of the company might have been more solid if we hadn't decided to publish a 60-page issue just because we could or because it was needed. That if we had said, okay, we need to do a 45-page issue and keep our powder dry for the future. But what was out there, no regrets.
Same here for Mailbox. I don't have any regrets about that. We did it, and after Mailbox, my life just went back to regular. I wanted to focus on my career. I did immediately after leaving Mailbox, which ended in 1999. I changed my career and went into something that I'm about to now retire from. You mentioned your pension, Adrienne. Well, I've got one coming. So my plan is now to use that and to basically spend a lot of time away. But no, it was then. I don't regret anything. I wish we didn't have to talk about a lot of issues, especially around AIDS, which was like us, like white is on rice at the time. And all of my other fellow publishers were attacking it from left and from right because it needed to be discussed and investigated and just dissected. And I'm glad that those days are over. So today, I don't think Mailbox would have a function, and certainly can't compete with the internet for the the publisher that's now printing. Even Time Magazine has a hard time competing against the internet. So I wish you the best. I wouldn't want to be you right now, but yeah, publishing and print is difficult, to say the very least. Best of luck, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
And definitely give us a shout out if you need any help or something of that nature. I'd be more than happy to talk you through some things of my experience, especially
Thank you. I appreciate that.
With the record labels and things like that I had contacts with.
I also think that a print exists next to the online world as well. And so then, once again, I think that we have to be careful that we're not kind of creating this either or kind of print versus online. Actually, a lot of what the younger queers are creating, it's print, and they also exist online at the same time as well.
Yes.
And also, Rick, I did catch your retirement mention. I can send you my PayPal. Fax it to you. We're good.
Gotcha. I hear you.
So with that, I know it's midnight for Ajamu, and we need our little baby to go to sleep. So you all can stay. You just can't stay here. Panelists, if you want to stick around, you can. You don't have to. But thank you, everyone, again. I'll send out the recording link, and make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page below. So
there you go.
Well, this panelist definitely has to go. I'm still here in the Capitol. It was fantastic, others. It really was.
It's great to see you, Papa.
Yeah.
You'll see me again when I take you to lunch in London.
You better.
I will.
I think we're...
And speaking of print media, definitely give a shout out to Jamel Fletcher of Swerve Magazine.
Oh,
how
yeah.
This brother continues to publish regularly or monthly is phenomenal.
Right.
So there's not much print on us though, but kudos to him and kudos to all the other sisters and brothers who JFY publication, What's Up, Kick Magazine up in Detroit, Curtis Lipscomb. And then we have, our folks down at Venus Magazine in Atlanta.
Oh, yeah.
Also, SBC and some other folks.
Vega Press and Fig Magazine.
Yeah, there's so much. And, so the sister was saying, the stuff is at the archives. And so many blessings that I must give to my brother Forward for saying, hey, our stuff must be preserved.
Yes, I agree.
Legacy, like my brother Sanford always says, we must lift ourselves up and lift everyone up and reserve our history, or herstory, excuse me, to be sure. I want to be gender friendly, hers and his and everything. So we're just the voice, as Bootyvox was the voice of those who weren't able to articulate themselves. And we had the platforms to do it.
Miss Thing, we need a part 2 on this. You need to save this knowledge. I mean, we need to make sure that this goes in next, okay?
Send me the date.
Okay, I'll pitch and carrier the date.
Okay. Because there's so many other sisters and brothers who definitely can be on this panel just from their experience or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got more to do, everybody.
We got more.
Absolutely.
Wait, is there a hand raise? Are we good?
We still got some time left?
I think we're good. Folks are staying on because they want to get every last word, so we can let folks go.
Bring it on.
But thank you to the panelists, and we'll do a little Kiki email exchange Boots thing. So thank you.
Well, as they say, thank you for having me.
Alan, it's great to see you again, and GD and Rick.
Yes, love and lubrication, brother man.
Love and lubrication indeed.